What happens when you risk everything to pull a broken child out of darkness, but the very people under his roof want to keep him there? The enemies don't just want the boy gone, they want the billionaire father destroyed, all to steal an unimaginable empire. It sounds like the plot of a terrifying psychological thriller, but this is the horrifying reality a poor single mom faces, just because she accidentally saved the heir to a $1 billion fortune. How does a lowly maid outsmart ruthless elites, expose their deadly secrets, and ultimately rise to become the billionaire's wife? Hit that subscribe button and like this video right now to stand with our fierce heroine. Trust me, you'll be holding your breath until the very last second. Let's get started.
The rain was unforgiving that Tuesday evening, crashing against the pavement of the city like shattered glass. Through the heavy downpour, a small shadow stumbled down the empty street. It was Gunn. He was only 8 years old. Drenched to the bone, his expensive designer clothes clinging to his shivering frame. He wasn't running away. He was chasing something. "Max!" He tried to scream, but no sound came out. Ever since his mother passed away, Gunn hadn't spoken a single word. His voice had been locked away in a dark, silent trauma. But right now, his only friend in the world, a golden retriever named Max, had slipped out the mansion gates, and Gunn had followed him into the cold, unforgiving city. Exhaustion hit him like a brick wall. His vision blurred. Just as his tiny knees were about to give out, a warm, golden light spilled onto the wet sidewalk. It was a small diner. The neon sign flickered, fighting against the storm. Gunn pushed the heavy glass door with the last ounce of his strength. The chime of the bell broke the quiet hum of the room. Luna wiped her hands on her apron and looked up from the counter. She was a single mom, working 14-hour shifts just to keep the lights on. But the exhaustion in her eyes vanished the second she saw the boy. He stood there, water dripping from his hair, shaking violently. Right beside him, a wet golden retriever whined softly. "Oh my God, sweetheart." Luna rushed out from behind the counter. She didn't care about the mud tracking across her clean floors. She grabbed a warm towel from the kitchen and wrapped it around his fragile shoulders. Gunn flinched. He usually hated being touched. But there was something about her. The soft scent of vanilla and fresh bread. It felt safe. It felt like a memory he had almost forgotten. "Helsa, honey, get my spare sweater from the back," Luna called out. Her 7-year-old daughter, Helsa, hopped off her stool, dropping her crayons. She ran over with the oversized sweater and a bright, toothy smile. "Here you go, you can wear this, and I'll share my hot chocolate with you," Helsa chirped. Luna quickly prepared a bowl of her signature chicken soup. As she watched the boy eat ravenously, her heart ached. He wouldn't speak. He wouldn't say his name. He just kept one hand tightly gripped on the dog's collar, his big, defensive eyes watching her every move. He must be autistic, or maybe deeply traumatized, Luna thought. A boy this well-dressed shouldn't be wandering the streets alone. She reached for the diner's old rotary phone. "I need to call the police. His parents must be out of their minds with worry." But before her finger could even dial the first digit, the storm outside was drowned out by the deafening screech of tires. Flashing headlights pierced through the rain-streaked windows. 3 massive black armored SUVs slammed to a halt, completely blocking the street. The diner door was violently pushed open. The wind howled as men in sharp black suits swarmed the small space. And then he walked in, Blaze, a man whose name alone could make Wall Street tremble. He was a wealthy CEO, a man made of cold logic, ruthless ambition, and tailored Italian wool. But right now, the billionaire boss didn't look like a titan of industry. He looked like a terrified father. His intense, dark eyes scanned the room, bypassing Luna completely until they landed on the boy sitting in the oversized sweater. "Gun!" Blaze's voice was a low, commanding rumble. He closed the distance in 3 long strides, falling to one knee. "Do you have any idea what you've done? The entire city is looking for you," he scolded, reaching out to grab his son's arm. What happened next shocked every bodyguard in the room. Gun flinched away violently. He scrambled backwards, his small hands desperately grabbing fistfuls of Luna's apron. He hid behind the single mom, trembling, refusing to look at his father. Blaze froze. His hand hung empty in the air. For months, his son hadn't let anyone hold him. Not doctors, not therapists, and certainly not him. But now, his traumatized son was clinging to a complete stranger in a rundown diner, finding a comfort he couldn't provide. Blaze slowly stood up to his full, intimidating height. His eyes finally shifted to Luna. He took in her flour-dusted apron, her tired but fiercely protective stance, and the way her hand naturally rested on his son's head to calm him. "Who are you?" Blaze demanded, his tone sharp, evaluating her like a high-stakes business merger. Luna didn't back down. "I'm the person who gave your freezing son a bowl of soup while you were busy losing him." A tense silence fell over the room. The bodyguards held their breath. Nobody spoke to the billionaire like that. Blaze's jaw tightened, but instead of anger, a calculating light sparked in his eyes. This was the beginning of an unexpected billionaire love story, though neither of them knew it yet. "He doesn't want to leave you," Blaze stated, a hard fact. "My son suffers from severe trauma. He rejects everyone, but not you." Blaze reached into the inside pocket of his suit and pulled out a sleek black checkbook. "I don't know what kind of magic you worked in the last 20 minutes, but I want to buy it." Luna frowned, deeply offended. "My kindness isn't for sale, mister." "Everything is for sale," Blaze countered smoothly. "Close this diner. Pack your things. Bring your daughter. You are moving into my estate tonight to be his personal caretaker." "Excuse me? I have a life here. I can't just drop everything and become a maid for some arrogant CEO." "Name your price," Blaze interrupted, his voice dropping to a hypnotic baritone. "Whatever you make in a year at this diner, I will pay you in a week. Your daughter will go to the best private schools." Luna opened her mouth to refuse again, but she looked down. She saw Gun still clinging to her, looking up at her with desperate, silent pleading. Then she looked at her own daughter, Helsa, whose sneakers were worn out at the toes. She thought about the overdue rent, the electricity bills, the endless struggle of a single mom. She swallowed her pride. The storm battered against the glass, but inside, a massive shift in their destiny had just occurred. "Fine," Luna said, her voice shaking slightly but full of resolve. "But I have rules, and you will follow them." The corner of Blaze's mouth twitched into what could almost be a smile. "We have a deal. Pack your bags. Your new life starts now." The iron gates of the Blaze estate loomed ahead like the entrance to a fortress. As the armored SUV pulled up the winding driveway, Luna gasped. The billionaire estate wasn't just a house. It was a sprawling, modern castle bathed in cinematic, cold, architectural lighting. It was breathtaking, but utterly lifeless. There were no flowers, no toys on the lawn, just perfectly manicured, sterile perfection. Helsa squeezed her mother's hand. "Mommy, is this a museum?" Luna forced a reassuring smile. "No, sweetie. It's our new home, at least for a while." Waiting for them at the massive oak doors was a man who looked as stiff as the marble pillars holding up the roof. This was Winston, the head butler. His silver hair was slicked back, and his immaculate tuxedo didn't have a single crease. But as his pale, sharp eyes scanned Luna's faded jeans and Helsa's worn-out sneakers, his lips curled into a sneer of barely hidden disgust. "Welcome to the Blaze estate." Winston's voice was smooth, yet dripped with venom. "I must inform you, Miss Luna, that in this house we adhere to strict high society rules." He handed her a leather-bound binder that looked thicker than a dictionary. Schedules, dietary restrictions, acceptable volumes of speaking. The young master gun requires absolute silence to heal. We do not tolerate noise. Winston glared pointedly at Helsa. Luna's maternal instincts flared. She took the heavy binder, dropped it unceremoniously onto a glass table, and met his icy glare. "I was hired by the wealthy CEO himself to take care of his son," Luna stated, her voice steady and fierce. "And the first rule of my care is that children are allowed to act like children." Winston's face hardened. A dark, dangerous shadow crossed his eyes. "We shall see how long you last, single mom." Over the next week, a silent war waged inside the mansion. Winston tried every trick to humiliate Luna. He locked away the cooking ingredients, assigned her to the most drafty room, and constantly criticized her every move, but he severely underestimated a mother's resilience. Luna ignored the sterile, silent treatment. Instead, she brought the house to life. She threw open the heavy velvet curtains, letting the golden sunlight wash over the cold floors. The massive, unused gourmet kitchen became her sanctuary. Soon, the suffocating scent of expensive polish was replaced by the warm, healing aroma of freshly baked cinnamon rolls and simmering stews. Gunn, who usually hid in the darkest corner of his room, began to follow the scent. One afternoon, the little boy stood at the kitchen doorway, clutching his golden retriever, Max. He watched quietly as Luna and Helsa baked cookies, their faces dusted with flour. Helsa noticed him. She didn't treat him like he was fragile or broken. She just walked over and held out a piece of dough shaped like a crooked star. "Do you want to make a dinosaur?" Helsa asked cheerfully. Gunn hesitated. He looked at Luna. Luna just gave him a soft, encouraging nod, her eyes full of genuine warmth. Slowly, the 8-year-old boy let go of his dog. He stepped into the kitchen. He took the dough. And for the first time in an entire year, Gunn smiled. It was a small, fragile smile, but it was there. Standing just outside the kitchen, hidden in the shadows of the hallway, was Blaze. The billionaire had come home early from a board meeting. He had expected the usual soul-crushing silence of his mansion. Instead, he heard something impossible. He heard a soft, breathless sound. It was the sound of his son laughing. Blaze's heart, frozen solid by grief and ruthless business deals, completely stopped. He peered around the corner. He saw his traumatized son covered in flour, smiling beside Helsa. And then, his eyes shifted to Luna. In the soft, volumetric lighting of the afternoon sun, she looked radiant. A smudge of chocolate was on her cheek, her hair tied up in a messy bun. She wasn't a supermodel or a wealthy heiress. She was a single mom fighting for her survival. Yet, in that exact moment, to the most powerful man in the city, she was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. The unexpected billionaire romance was no longer a business arrangement. A seed of genuine affection had just taken root. "Luna," Blaze whispered to himself, testing the sound of her name on his lips. But Blaze wasn't the only one watching. Up on the second-floor balcony, peering through the carved marble railings, stood Winston. The old butler's hands gripped the railing so tightly his knuckles turned white. His plan to keep the boy weak and silent was falling apart. ruined by this lowly woman. She is curing him, Winston muttered, his eyes narrowing into venomous slits. Madame Raven will not be pleased. The child was supposed to fade away. He pulled a small, dark vial from the inner pocket of his tuxedo, rubbing his thumb over the smooth glass. If the boy is getting stronger. Winston smiled, a cold, terrifying grimace. Then I simply cannot afford to wait any longer. The storm outside had passed, but inside the billionaire's estate, a much darker, deadlier storm was just beginning to gather. In the ruthless world of the ultra-rich, blood is rarely thicker than money. The Blaze family empire was built on a single, ironclad rule left by the late grandfather. The first son to produce a healthy heir inherits everything. This billionaire family drama was not a secret. Raven, Blaze's cunning stepmother, knew this better than anyone. Her own son was infertile. So she crafted a stepmother's trap so brilliant, no one saw it coming. She planted Winston, the fake butler, inside Blaze's home. For a year, Winston had been secretly slipping a tasteless powder into the wealthy CEO's morning coffee, destroying his chances of ever having another child. The only obstacle left was the young master, Gunn. The traumatized boy was supposed to quietly waste away from depression. But then, the single mom arrived. Winston stood in the shadows of the dining room, his pale eyes fixed on the living room. Gunn was sitting on the rug, petting his golden retriever. Luna was reading a storybook, her voice soft and melodic. Suddenly, Gunn pointed at a picture of a lion in the book. "Roar," the 8-year-old boy whispered. It was just one word. But in the billionaire estate, it echoed like a thunderclap. Winston's blood ran cold. The boy was speaking. The healing romance taking root in this house was destroying a billion-dollar assassination plot. I must end this. Tonight, Winston thought to himself, his face twisting into a mask of pure malice. He retreated to the kitchen, making sure the security cameras in the hall were in their standard blind spot. The clock struck midnight. The mansion was completely silent. Winston warmed a glass of premium milk. From his pocket, he drew the small, dark vial. It was a rare, untraceable poison. It wouldn't kill the boy instantly. It would just make his heart stop in his sleep. A tragic, quiet accident for a sickly child. He tipped the vial. 3 drops of death vanished into the white liquid. But Winston made one fatal mistake. He didn't know that a mother's intuition never sleeps. Luna had come downstairs for a glass of water. Walking barefoot, her steps were completely silent. She stopped dead in her tracks just outside the kitchen archway. Through the crack in the door, she saw the butler holding the vial. She watched him stir the milk with a sinister, self-satisfied smirk. Panic seized her throat. Her heart hammered wildly against her ribs. He's trying to kill Gunn. Her mind screamed. She wanted to yell. She wanted to tackle the old man to the ground. But Luna was smart. She was a survivor. She had no proof. If she accused the head butler of a billionaire family with zero evidence, he would just deny it, and Blaze might throw her out. If she left this house, Gunn would be defenseless. She had to outsmart him. Luna took a deep breath, smoothing her expression into one of innocent exhaustion. She deliberately scuffed her heel against the marble floor. Winston immediately slipped the vial back into his pocket and spun around, his fake, polite smile snapping into place. "Miss Luna, what are you doing awake at this hour?" he asked smoothly. "Just getting some water," Luna said, walking casually into the kitchen. Her eyes darted to the silver tray. "Is that for Gunn?" "Yes. The young master had a slight cough. I prepared some warm milk with honey to help him sleep." Winston lied perfectly. How thoughtful. Luna smiled brightly. I'm heading up to check on him anyway. I'll take it to him. She reached for the tray, but Winston grabbed the other side of it. His grip was like a steel vise. That is not necessary. It is my duty as the butler. Winston hissed, his polite facade cracking just a fraction. I insist, Winston. The billionaire pays me to be his caretaker, right? Luna pulled harder. For 3 seconds, they stood locked in a silent, deadly tug of war over a single glass of poisoned milk. The air crackled with lethal tension. Winston couldn't risk a scene. Gritting his teeth, he let go. As you wish. But I shall accompany you to ensure he drinks it. Luna felt sick. The old man was going to watch guns swallow the poison. She carried the silver tray up the grand sweeping staircase, her mind racing 1,000,000 miles an hour. Winston walked exactly 2 steps behind her, like the Grim Reaper. They reached the top of the stairs, right in front of Gunn's bedroom door. Winston stepped forward to open it. This was her only chance. Luna suddenly twisted her ankle. She let out a sharp gasp, violently tilting the tray. The glass of milk flew through the air and shattered into 100 pieces against the expensive marble floor. The white liquid pooled instantly. Oh my goodness, I am so clumsy. Luna cried out, dropping to her knees. Winston's face turned purple with rage. His fists clenched so tightly his fingernails dug into his palms. His perfect assassination plan was lying in a puddle. You clumsy fool, Winston snarled, dropping the polite act entirely. Luna looked up at him from the floor. She made sure her eyes were wide and innocent, but deep down, a fierce warrior was waking up. I'm so sorry, Winston. I'll clean this up right now. Don't worry, Gunn doesn't need milk tonight, she said sweetly. Winston glared at her, breathing heavily. He spun on his heel and marched away into the darkness of the hallway. Once he was gone, Luna's sweet expression vanished. Her hands trembled as she pulled a tissue from her pocket. Very carefully, she soaked up a few drops of the spilled milk and wrapped it tightly inside the tissue. She wasn't just a maid anymore. She was a mother protecting her pack. And she was going to expose this billionaire family's darkest secret, even if it cost her life. The billionaire estate was no longer a luxury mansion. To Luna, it had become a gilded cage filled with invisible traps. She knew the fake butler was trying to murder the billionaire's heir. And worse, Winston now knew that she was onto him. It was a deadly game of cat and mouse. The next morning, the single mom ordered a tiny, motion sensor nanny cam online, hiding it perfectly inside a potted plant in the dining room. She didn't stop there. Every time Blaze finished his morning tea, she secretly scraped the leftover leaves into a Ziploc bag. The poisoned milk sample and the tea leaves were securely hidden at the bottom of her suitcase, ready to be sent to a lab. But before she could make her move, disaster struck. Blaze was unexpectedly called away for an emergency business trip to Tokyo. A massive corporate takeover orchestrated by his stepmother, Raven, specifically designed to get him out of the house. Standing by his armored SUV, the wealthy CEO hesitated. For the first time in his life, he didn't want to leave. He looked at Luna. The morning breeze gently played with her hair. Their eyes met, sharing an unspoken, simmering billionaire romance. Take care of him, Luna, Blaze said, his deep voice carrying a rare trace of vulnerability. I will protect him with my life, Luna promised. Winston stood on the marble steps, watching the SUV disappear down the driveway. A sinister, chilling smile spread across his wrinkled face. Yes, protect him with your life, Miss Luna, Winston muttered under his breath. Because tonight, I will take them both. That evening, a powerful thunderstorm rolled over the city, drowning the estate in heavy rain and crashing thunder. Luna was in the kitchen when Winston appeared. His polite facade was back in place. "Miss Luna, the children requested hot cocoa. Unfortunately, the premium cocoa powder is locked in the underground wine cellar. Could you fetch it?" Luna hesitated. Something felt wrong. But Helsa and Gunn were already running down the hallway, excited for their treat. To keep them safe, she decided to take them with her. "Come on, kids, let's go together." The underground wine cellar was a massive, vault-like room built with soundproof stone walls and heavy steel doors designed to survive a tornado. As Luna stepped inside, searching the dim shelves, the heavy steel doors suddenly slammed shut behind them. Clang! The sound echoed like a gunshot. Click! The deadbolt locked from the outside. "Winston, open the door!" Luna yelled, slamming her fists against the cold steel. No answer, just the muffled sound of thunder from the outside world. Then she heard it. A soft, continuous hissing sound coming from the corner of the room. Luna sniffed the air. Her blood turned to ice. Gas. The old man had severed the underground gas pipe. He was staging a tragic accident, a catastrophic explosion that would erase the single mom and the billionaire's heir in one fiery blast. "Mommy, it smells bad in here." Helsa coughed, rubbing her eyes. Gunn began to panic. The enclosed space and the toxic air triggered his severe anxiety. He covered his ears and backed into a corner, trembling violently. Luna had to act fast. She pulled out her phone. No signal. The thick stone walls blocked everything. The toxic gas was filling the room rapidly. They had less than 5 minutes before they passed out. Desperation kicked in. Luna scanned the ceiling and spotted a tiny, 6-inch ventilation shaft near the top corner of the wall. It was way too small for an adult. But a child, a small child, could fit. Luna frantically started stacking heavy wooden wine crates on top of each other, building a makeshift staircase. Her hands bled from the splinters, but she didn't stop. She grabbed Gunn by the shoulders. She didn't look at him like a fragile, broken boy. She looked at him like a man. "Gunn, look at me," Luna ordered, her voice cutting through his panic. "I need you to be brave. I need you to be a superhero today." Gunn looked into her fiercely loving eyes. For the first time, he didn't look away. "You are going to crawl through that vent. You are going to hold Helsa's hand, and you are not going to let go. Do you understand?" Gunn swallowed hard. He looked at little Helsa, who was crying and coughing from the gas. Then, the traumatized billionaire's son did something incredible. He nodded, and he reached out to take Helsa's hand. "Go. Go now." Luna hoisted them up the crates. Gunn squeezed into the narrow, pitch-black vent, pulling Helsa behind him. It was terrifying, but he kept moving, motivated by the memory of Luna's warm smile. Down in the cellar, Luna slumped against the steel door. Her lungs burned. Her vision was fading to black. "Just run, babies. Just run," she whispered, before slipping into unconsciousness. Up above, in the main hallway, Winston was pouring himself a glass of expensive whiskey, waiting for the inevitable boom. But instead of an explosion, a different sound shattered the storm. "Wee-ee-ye-o-wee-ee-ohs," the deafening shriek of the estate's emergency security alarm. Red strobe lights flashed violently across the walls. Winston dropped his crystal glass. It shattered on the floor. Gunn and Helsa had made it out. They had smashed the emergency glass panel in the security room. And in Tokyo, half a world away, Blaze's private phone suddenly flashed red. The Billionaire Love Story was about to turn into a path of absolute vengeance. The private jet cut through the raging storm over the Pacific Ocean like a silver blade. Inside, Blaze was a terrifying sight. The usually calm and composed wealthy CEO was pacing the cabin, his eyes burning with lethal fury. He had ordered the pilot to push the engines past their absolute limits. Every second that ticked by felt like glass grinding against his heart. Back at the billionaire estate, red sirens painted the wet courtyard. Fire trucks and paramedics swarmed the property. The heavy steel door of the wine cellar had just been pried open by the fire department. Toxic gas poured out like thick, white smoke. And lying on the cold stone floor, barely breathing, was Luna. "Mommy, Mommy, wake up!" Helsa sobbed, trying to run to her, but a paramedic held her back. Gunn stood next to her, tears streaming down his silent face. He gripped Helsa's hand so tightly his knuckles were white. Suddenly, the crowd parted. Blaze strode through the grand hall. He didn't look at the police. He didn't look at the damage. He only saw her. He dropped to his knees, pulling Luna's limp body into his arms. His tailored Italian suit was instantly ruined by the soot and water, but he didn't care. "Luna," he whispered, his voice cracking. "Breathe. Come back to me." As if hearing his plea, Luna let out a ragged gasp. She coughed violently, her eyelids fluttering open. When she saw Blaze's face, a wave of profound relief washed over her. The Billionaire Love Story had moved past words. It was anchored in survival. But the tender moment was suddenly shattered by a loud, theatrical wail. "Oh, thank heavens. The tragedy I have witnessed." Winston, the fake butler, rushed forward. He fell to his knees in front of the police officers, putting on an Oscar-worthy performance of a traumatized servant. "Sir Blaze, I tried to stop her," Winston cried, pointing a trembling, accusing finger directly at Luna. "This single mom is completely reckless. She took the children down to the cellar to play, ignored the safety protocols, and broke the gas valve. She nearly killed your son." The police officers began taking notes. The narrative seemed plausible. A careless maid making a fatal mistake. Blaze slowly stood up. His aura was so dangerously cold that the temperature in the room seemed to drop. He looked at Winston, then at Luna, who was currently being supported by a medic. Luna wiped the soot from her mouth. She didn't cry. She didn't panic. She just smiled, a cold, terrifyingly victorious smile. "Is that your final story, Winston?" Luna asked, her voice raspy but steady. Winston sneered, confident in his victory. "It is the truth, you wretched woman." Luna reached into the hidden pocket of her damp jacket. She pulled out her smartphone and tapped the screen. "Officers," Luna said loudly, making sure everyone heard. "I have a cloud-linked nanny cam hidden in the dining room potted plant." Winston's face instantly lost all its color. He looked like he had just seen a ghost. Luna pressed play. The audio echoed through the grand hall. "Yes, protect him with your life, Miss Luna. Because tonight I will take them both." Winston's sinister, recorded voice filled the room. The police officers immediately dropped their notepads and rested their hands on their holstered weapons. But Luna wasn't finished. "I also have the lab results sent to my email an hour ago," Luna continued smoothly. "The milk you tried to feed Gunn contained highly illegal cardiotoxins. And the tea you've been serving, Mr. Blaze? Laced with chemical sterilizers." Checkmate. The entire hall erupted into chaos. The billionaire estate staff gasped in pure horror. Winston realized he was trapped. He fell to his knees again, but this time he wasn't acting. He was shaking in absolute terror. Blaze stepped forward, grabbing the old man by the collar of his expensive tuxedo, lifting him effortlessly off the ground. "Who gave you the order?" Blaze roared, a sound so primal it made the windows rattle. "Give me the name." Winston choked, gasping for air. His eyes darted around frantically. He wanted to confess. He wanted to scream Raven's name. But then, he remembered the photo Raven had sent him yesterday. A picture of his own wife and daughter, tied to a chair in a dark basement. If he spoke, his family would die. I acted alone." Winston spat, tears of genuine despair rolling down his face. "I hated your family. I wanted to see the great Blaze Empire burn. It was all me." The police quickly moved in, ripping Winston from Blaze's grip and slapping heavy steel handcuffs onto his wrists. As they dragged the screaming butler away to the squad cars, the crisis seemed to be over. Luna leaned against the wall, finally letting out a long, exhausted breath. She had won. She had protected the children. But Blaze was a predator of the corporate world. He didn't build a billion-dollar empire by being gullible. He watched the police car drive away, his eyes narrowing into cold, calculating slits. "He's lying," Blaze murmured, his voice so low only Luna could hear. A man acting on pure hatred doesn't look terrified. He looks defiant. Winston was protecting someone. Blaze pulled out his phone and dialed a highly encrypted number. "Vanguard unit." A rough voice answered immediately. "I need a complete shadow profile on my head butler, Winston," Blaze ordered quietly, walking away from the crowd. "Dig into his bank accounts, his offshore assets, and his family. Find out who holds his leash, and do it before sunrise." He hung up the phone. He knew exactly who was capable of such a ruthless stepmother's trap. Blaze looked back at Luna, who was now holding both gun and Helsa in a tight, protective embrace. Nobody touched his family. Nobody. The shadow investigation had begun. The real mastermind was about to face the wrath of a billionaire who had finally found something worth destroying the world for. The boardroom of the Blaze Corporation was a temple of glass and steel, towering high above the city skyline. At the head of the massive mahogany table sat Raven. The cunning stepmother wore a designer suit and a victorious, venomous smirk. She was moments away from winning the ultimate prize of this billionaire family drama. "Gentlemen of the board," Raven announced, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "It breaks my heart to say this, but my stepson, Blaze, is mentally unfit to lead." She slid a stack of forged documents across the table. "His son was nearly killed in his own estate. He is distracted, reckless, and obsessed with a lowly single mom who works as his maid. I move for an immediate vote of no confidence." The wealthy investors nodded, murmuring in agreement. The stepmother's trap had worked perfectly. Blaze was about to lose his billionaire empire. Raven raised her pen to sign the executive transfer. Bam! The heavy double doors of the boardroom were violently kicked open. The heavy mahogany slammed against the glass walls, shattering the silence. Everyone froze. Standing in the doorway was Blaze. He wasn't the broken, distracted man Raven had described. He looked like an absolute king, radiating raw, dangerous power. And he didn't come alone. Flanking him were two heavily armed police detectives. Beside them stood Luna, her head held high, looking sharper and braver than any elite executive in the room. But it was the people trailing behind them that made Raven's face drain of all its color. It was Winston, the disgraced butler. And holding his trembling hands were his wife and daughter. The very family Raven had locked in a dark basement to ensure Winston's silence. The billionaire CEO walked slowly to the head of the table. He didn't yell. He didn't need to. His quiet authority was terrifying. "Did you really think I wouldn't find them, Raven?" Blaze asked softly. "My Vanguard security team breached your little warehouse 3 hours ago. Raven stood up abruptly, her chair tipping over. This is an outrage. Security. Remove this crazy woman and these liars from my building. Sit down, Blaze commanded. It wasn't a request. It was an execution order. Winston stepped forward. The old man looked defeated, but his eyes burned with a newfound hatred for the woman who had threatened his family. She orchestrated everything. Winston confessed loudly to the shocked boardroom. Madame Raven ordered me to poison the young master. She provided the chemical sterilizers to slip into Mr. Blaze's tea. And when Miss Luna discovered the truth, Raven ordered me to lock them in the gas cellar. He's lying. He has no proof. Raven screeched, her perfectly groomed hair now falling wildly into her face. Luna stepped forward. The single mom pulled a sleek black folder from her bag and tossed it onto the mahogany table. It slid to a stop right in front of the board directors. Bank transfers, Luna said coolly. Offshore accounts routing millions from Raven's personal fund to a shell company owned by Winston, not to mention the audio recordings from the nanny cam. The room erupted into gasps. The evidence was irrefutable. The lead detective approached Raven, pulling out a pair of cold steel handcuffs. Raven Blaze, you are under arrest for attempted murder, kidnapping, and corporate fraud. No, you can't do this to me. I am the matriarch. I built this. Raven kicked and screamed, completely losing her mind as the officers dragged her out of the glass doors. The boardroom fell dead silent. Blaze looked at the remaining investors. The meeting is adjourned. I have a family to get back to. 3 months later. The dark storms that once haunted the billionaire estate were gone forever. Sunlight poured into the blooming garden. The cold, sterile mansion was now filled with the sound of barking dogs, running footsteps, and laughter. Helsa was running across the green lawn, throwing a frisbee for Max, the golden retriever. Sitting on a picnic blanket under the shade of a massive oak tree was Luna. She was no longer wearing a faded apron. She wore a beautiful, flowing white sundress. Next to her sat Gunn. The traumatized boy who once hid in the dark was now vibrant, healthy, and drawing a picture of a superhero. Blaze walked out of the glass patio doors, holding 2 glasses of lemonade. He couldn't take his eyes off Luna. This billionaire love story wasn't born in high society galas. It was born in the fire of survival, in a tiny diner, and in the fierce protective heart of a mother. He knelt down on the blanket beside her. He didn't offer her a business contract this time. Blaze reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside rested a breathtaking, flawless diamond ring. Luna, Blaze whispered, his dark eyes filled with absolute devotion. You saved my son. You saved me. You brought light into a world I thought was dead. He took her hand, kissing her knuckles. Will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life making you the happiest woman on earth? Luna's eyes filled with happy tears. Before she could even say yes, a small, clear voice broke the silence. Say yes, Mom. Both Blaze and Luna froze. They turned to look at Gunn. The 8-year-old boy had put down his crayons. He was looking right at Luna, his face beaming with a bright, beautiful smile. Say yes, Mom, Gunn repeated, loud and clear. Luna let out a sob, wrapping her arms tightly around the boy. Blaze wrapped his strong arms around both of them, burying his face in Luna's hair. Helsa and Max ran over, crashing into the group hug, laughing joyfully. The wealthy CEO had finally found his greatest treasure. The billionaire love story was complete.
What a perfectly sweet and satisfying ending to a journey filled with heartbreak and danger, right? A mother's fierce bravery ultimately triumphed over the most ruthless schemes of the billionaire elite. If this breathtaking plot twist and healing romance left you satisfied, smash that like button right now and drop a comment telling me which scene was your absolute favorite. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss out on our next highly addictive billionaire love stories and family dramas. Thank you so much for watching until the very end, and I'll see you in the next one.